Srimad Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Ayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we first offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, onto Narayan, Rishi, supermost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed to practically nil, and thus loving service unto the glorious Lord, who is praised with transcendental hymns, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 18. Parikshit cursed by a Brahmana boy. Text number 5. Tavat Kalir Na Prabhavet Tavat Kalir Na Prabhavet Pravishto Piha Savita Pravishto Piha Savita Yadvad Isho Mahan Gurjam Yadvad Isho Mahan Gurjam Abhimanyava Ekarat Abhimanyava Ekarat Tabat Kalina Prabhavet Pavishto Piha Savitaha Yavadisho Mahan Urjam Abhimanyava Ekarat Tavat Kalir Na Prabhavet Pravishto Piha Savitaha Yavadisho Mahanurjam Abhimanyava Ekarat Tavat Kalir Na Prabhavet Pravishto Piha Savitaha Yavadisho Mahanurjam Abhimanyava Ekarat
Tavat Kalina Prabhavet Pravishto Piha Savataha Yavadisho Mahanurjam Abhimanyava Ekarat
Tavat Kalina Prabhave Pravishto Piha Sarvata Yavad Isho Mahanurjam Abhimanya Ekarat
Tavat Kalina Prabhavet
Pravishtopiha sarvata
Pravishtopiha sarvata
Yavadisho mahanurvyam
Yavadisho mahanuryam
Abhimanya va ekarat
Abhimanya va ekarat
Tavakalina prabhavat
Tavakalina prabhavet
Pravistopiya savata
Pravishtopiha sarvata
Yavadiso maharuvyam
Yavadisho mahanuryam
Avamanya vaakarat
Abhimanya va ekarat
Tavatkalirna prabhavet
Tavakalina prabhavet
Pravishtopiha sarvatah
Pravishtopiha sarvata
Yavad isho mahan urvyam
Yavadisho mahanuryam
Abhimanyava ekarat
Abhimanya va ekarat
Tavakalina prabhavet
Tavakalina prabhavet
Pravishtopiha sarvataha
Pravishtopiha sarvata
Yavadisho mahanuryam
Yavadisho mahanuryam
Abhimanya va ekarat
Abhimanya va ekarat Tavakalina prabhavet Pravishtopiha sarvata Yavadisho mahanuryam Abhimanya va ekarat
Tavat ishwar tav prabhavat
Tavakalina prabhavet
Pravishtopiha sarvatah
Pravishtopiha sarvata
Yavad isho mahaturyam
Yavadisho mahanuryam
Abhimanya ekarat
Abhimanya va ekarat. Anyone else? Okay, word for word transliteration here. Tavat, so long. Kali, personality of Kali. Na, cannot. Prabhavet, flourish. Pravishtaha, enter in. Or entered in. Api, even though. Iha, here. Sarvataha, everywhere. Yavat, as long as. Isaha, the Lord. Mahan, great. Urjam, powerful. Abhimanyavaha, the son of Abhimanyu. Ekarat, the one emperor. Translation. As long as the great, powerful son of Abhimanyu remains the emperor of the world, there is no chance that the personality of Kali will flourish. Please repeat. As long as the great, powerful son of Abhimanyu remains the emperor of the world, there is no chance that the personality of Kali will flourish. Srila Prabhupada's divine purport.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
As we have already explained, the personality of Kali had entered the jurisdiction of this earth long ago, and he was looking for an opportunity to spread his influence all over the world. But he could not do so satisfactorily due to the presence of Maharaj Parikshit. That is the way of good government. The disturbing elements, like the personality of Kali, will always try to extend their nefarious activities, but it is the duty of the able state to check them by all means. Although Maharaj Parikshit allotted places for the personality of Kali, at the same time he gave no chance for the citizens to be swayed by the personality of Kali. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to the 5th sloka of the 1st canto, 18th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Parikshit cursed by a Brahmana boy. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay. Any comment or question about this verse? Comment? Kamala Kaivalya.
So Maharaj Parikshit, how big was his kingdom?
Well, it's pretty big. Yadu dynasty, let's see, Parikshit Maharaj. Did he didn't take over the Kuru dynasty. Parikshit Maharaj was the son of Abhimanyu. Yeah, so it was the Kuru dynasty because he was married to who? Uttara? No, Uttara was his mother, right? Who was, huh?
She was Virat, so I don't remember who Parikshit Maharaj was.
Yeah, so he took over from his uncle and his grandfather, and I guess that's his granduncle, Yudhisthira Maharaj and Arjuna, his grandfather. He took over from them, so that was the Kuru dynasty. And, that's in Hastinapur, in the Delhi area. But, there were so many other kingdoms. Yudhisthira Maharaj had, by his great prowess and the prowess of his brothers, he had brought all these other kingdoms, ultimately under the governance of his dynasty.
Her name was Iravati.
That was Parikshit's wife, was Iravati?
Iravati.
So, whether that, after the battle of Kurukshetra, so many of these dynasties were decimated, but still there was some, king in charge, and still the Kuru dynasty was under the reigns of Yudhisthira Maharaj until he handed over to Parikshit. So they were pretty much the superior governance in the subcontinent of Bharatavarsha. And at that time, that was the most prominent country in the world. There was, I would assume, there were different types of dynasties or kingly kingdoms in Europe, Central Asia, probably in the Americas, because it's stated in the Bhagavatam that Parashuram had chased out so many Kshatriyas, and Prabhupada mentions in his purport that dynasties in Greece and Rome, they all came from these Kshatriya princes that Parashuram had driven out. So they were there during the time of Yudhisthira Maharaj, but they were not as powerful as the Bharatavarsha kingdom that was ultimately headed by Yudhisthira Maharaj, but you still had the Yadu dynasty on there. So although they had submitted to Yudhisthira Maharaj, he had another extremely, most powerful dynasty of warriors that no one could conquer, in the universe. So at that time the earth was really under the control of very powerful Kshatriyas. And all of this passed on to Maharaj Parikshit, who himself was, an extremely powerful Kshatriya. We have politicians today and administrators, and we have military people, but they certainly rely on their schooling to conduct a war or to administrate kingdoms. But for battle, they really rely upon, their weapons, and, Kshatriyas do rely upon their weapons. It's just a different system of weaponry. Nowadays, everything is run by combustion, whether it be nuclear combustion or simply gunpowder. But there's some combustion that, ejects some sort of missile, some sort of weapon, to kill the enemy. But in those days, there was this science of sound where they could effect these weapons through the chanting of mantras. And so the Kshatriyas, they would learn how to use all these weapons. And although they were very strong people, physically and mentally, still they had command of these weapons. These weapons wasn't an easy thing to possess them. It really had to be passed on by a guru who was blessed with that weapon, or by a deva or some great personality, some of a Kshatriya who had the ability to give that weapon. So Arjuna's son Abhimanyu, he had received most of these weapons right from his father, even while he was in the womb of his mother. He was such a powerful hero. He was actually a deva. He was the son of Chandradev, Somadev, the god of the moon, who was actually the seat or the father of the whole Kuru dynasty. On the earth, there are two dynasties of the warrior people, one coming from the god of the moon, and the other coming from the god of the sun. So Lord Ramchandra appeared in the sun god's dynasty, and Krishna appeared in the moon god's dynasty. And the Kuru dynasty is all from that moon god dynasty. So when Krishna appeared on earth, the Devas appeared with him, and so many eternal associates of Lord Krishna appeared with him. Chandradev and his son were very attached, and Chandradev requested for his son to return to his side as soon as possible, so Krishna gave him that blessing. So he appeared as the son of Arjuna from his wife Subhadra, the sister of Krishna. So Abhimanyu was trained to be a great warrior, and it wasn't unusual for these warriors to go to battle at 16 years of age, to be married at 16 years of age. Abhimanyu was married. I don't think he was much older than that, but I could be wrong. Maybe he was as old as 24 or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. For some reason I said 16. But even nowadays, kids 18 years old sign up for the military and go off to war. You may even be 17. It's not unusual. During World War II, there were kids that were only 16 years old that would pretend to be 18, and somehow they would slip in. They would be able to do it. Young people have this sort of chivalrous, and they can be real idealistic, and they want to go off and participate for what they consider the righteous fight to be. So it wasn't an unusual thing for such a young person to take up battle. And Abhimanyu did that, of course, in the battle of Kurukshetra. And he was as powerful as his father. It was very difficult for the opposing forces to face him. He was so powerful. And I'm sure we're familiar with the story how he saved the Pandavas from annihilation by Dronacharya, who had assembled a certain battle formation that was impenetrable and was just mowing down all the forces of the Pandavas. And nobody could break that battle formation. Only Arjuna knew how to do it, but they would, there was this group of warriors that hated Arjuna. Arjuna had slain their forefathers in battle, and they had all taken vows that they would face Arjuna in battle and either kill him or be killed. And so they had different codes that they would fight according to. And so if somebody challenged you to battle, you would have to battle with him until that person was defeated or killed, one or the other. And you couldn't really leave the battlefield. So they would call Arjuna to a certain part of the battlefield that was a distance away. In the meantime, that was the plan of the Kauravas. They would call Arjuna away because it was known that Arjuna could break this formation. And once it was broken, then all the opposing forces could enter in, and then you'd just have a huge battle, but you would lose your advantage of being self-contained and being able to divide the opposing forces through your formation. So Arjuna would be called away, and he would have a battle with these very powerful warriors who had all taken this vow to either be killed by Arjuna or to kill Arjuna. And the meantime, that formation would annihilate all the Pandavas' troops. And what good would it be if they had no army to fight with? So that was going on, and Arjuna could not come to the rescue because these warriors were so powerful. They kept standing up to him, despite losing numerous people in their army. They would continue to fight with him, minute after minute and hour after hour, and the Pandavas looked like they were going to be annihilated. And Abhimanyu, he knew how to break that formation, but he never learned the mantras to come out of the formation once he broke it. So Yudhisthira, he didn't want Abhimanyu to break the formation and to enter into it alone. So the Pandavas thought that if he breaks it, then we'll just follow right behind him, and that way we will all enter the formation and we'll annihilate that formation from within it. What they didn't know about was another one of their arch enemies. They had many arch enemies that were on the side of Duryodhana. One was the brother-in-law of Duryodhana. I can't remember his name right now. That rascal tried to molest Draupadi, and when Bhima...
Was it Jayadratha?
Yeah, Jayadratha. When Bhima chastised him, of course he was greatly insulted. And he had managed later, Bhima wanted to kill him, but Yudhisthira rescued him, and so they just chastised him by insulting him and embarrassing him. But it was so embarrassing to his Kshatriya pride that he went off to perform austerities to please Lord Shiva, and he had received the benediction. He wanted the benediction to kill him, but Lord Shiva didn't give him that benediction. He gave him the benediction to be able to defeat all of them, except for Arjuna one time. One time he could defeat them all. And so they stationed him in a certain place that when the formation was broken by Abhimanyu, he came to the rescue of the formation, and he kept all the Pandavas from entering. None of them could defeat him, as much as they tried, with the prowess of Bhima and Arjuna and Nakula Sahadev, whoever else was there. Krishna's commander-in-chief of his army, Satyaki, was fighting on their side. So many other powerful warriors, but nobody could defeat Jayadratha on that day. And so the formation remained contained. It wasn't mowing down the Pandavas' troops because they were all having to deal with the Pandavas there trying to enter, but the Pandavas couldn't enter. So Abhimanyu was left alone inside the formation and was decimating all the troops of the Kauravas. It was he was so powerful that he could do that single-handedly. And the Kauravas were now in a predicament to figure out, what are they going to do, because every time one of the other Kaurava warriors, powerful warriors, would challenge Abhimanyu, they would fight according to these codes. If somebody challenged you, then, those two people would fight. And Abhimanyu was defeating them all. He was defeating Karna, he was defeating Dronacharya, he was defeating Duryodhana, he was defeating all these powerful warriors. And so finally they made a plan that basically they would murder him because they would break the rules of conduct. Those rules of conduct that were agreed upon at the beginning of the war was established by Bhishmadev. But when Bhishmadev was killed, then begun the breaking of the rules. And although the powerful and great Brahmana Dronacharya was in charge of the Kaurava troops, he agreed to this. He agreed to it, and so Dronacharya, Duryodhana, Karna, and two other great powerful Maharajas, they surrounded Abhimanyu all at once, and he was having to fight with all five of them. And then from behind, they broke his weapons, and he was left weaponless to fight with them. And so they would just pierce him with arrows, and finally he was, after so much fatigue of fighting alone and fighting with these great warriors and being pierced with so many arrows and lances and things like that, he was challenged by Duryodhana's son. And they engaged in a club battle. And everybody watched them fight. And eventually, according to the story in the Mahabharata, they both became unconscious. But Duryodhana's son, he became conscious first. And again, opposed the rules of conduct. When Abhimanyu was attempting to get to his feet, he struck him with his club on the head, and Abhimanyu left his body at that time. So, by that time the sun was setting, and that was the rule. When the sun set, the battles came to an end, and everybody would go home and take care of their wounds, and the great heroes would be, have some funeral ceremony performed, and people would take dinner and, try to relax and get some sleep and prepare for battle the next day. So the Pandavas was saved by Abhimanyu, but it was at the cost of his life. And you can imagine the feeling of his uncles, because now Arjuna is going to come home, and this is his most dear son. And when Arjuna comes home and the son is not there, and he's going to question them. How could you were here? How did you how was it that he died in battle with your protection? So it's a very, very long story, but that's the kind of people that Parikshit Maharaj grew up with. He was the son of Abhimanyu, conceived, prior to the Battle of Kurukshetra. And, he possessed those genes, or that pure Kshatriya nature, which is, very, very hard to find. And at the same time, he was, a great devotee of Lord Krishna. So, certainly Pritchett derived his strength from there. He had the right genes, but he also had the right training. His uncles were there, his grandfather was there, and they all trained him to actually become the next emperor. It's like this Saturday we're having some secession festival. So these things were all planned out. There had to be somebody to take over the governance because they had those monarchies, and the king would pass it on to his child. The child was conceived to be a great Kshatriya prince. He was properly trained not only in battle to be able to enforce the law, but he was also trained to administer the state. He was trained as a superb judge to distinguish between not only right and wrong, but those who were cheating and not cheating, those who were lying or not lying, very fine points of the law, and how to treat everyone fairly and equally. All these things they had to learn. And Yudhisthira was most expert at it, himself being the son of Dharma himself. So, Pritchett Maharaj, he learned all these things. He learned from his grandfather, who had taught his own father, who had died in the battle. He didn't have any, they were trained to do this type of fighting. It wasn't unusual. They would not, they would fight until death. This was the code of the Kshatriya. And they could do that in a very smiling way, just like a businessman can make a lot of profit during the Christmas season. And it can make him very happy. So similarly, the Kshatriyas, they relished when it was a righteous war that they would get to either lay their life down for or to achieve victory. Something like, these football players, they celebrate their victory, or they lose playing their best game. So similarly, they had this type of attitude. And, they were, we could say, professional soldiers who had, they were not drafted. They were not just placed into the army because they needed men and given 3 months training and then sent off to see some gruesome war. And then, people wonder why they would come back, traumatized. But, they being able to deal with the effects of war and being able to deal with killing their opponents and not being afraid to be killed themselves. This was all a part of their training. They were the best martial artists that you could find. So, Pritchett learned from his father's father, who was still extremely powerful and who still held the magical Gandiva bow, that made him extremely powerful. And, he learned to administer a government from Yudhisthira Maharaj. He learned to admire physical strength from Bhima. So, he was, a most qualified person. So therefore we can understand that it was easy for him to keep the citizens from succumbing to the influence of Kali. Kali's there, and Kali's selling his wares. He's wanting all the people to indulge in some drink. After all, we're in the material world. Things can be very difficult. Have a little pleasure that will come just from, taking some form of happiness, they would call it, or intoxication, some pill or some something to smoke or to drink, and it gives you some euphoria for some time, and then you can relax and go to bed and wake up the next morning and deal with whatever ordeal you had to face, So Kali's trying to sell these things to everyone. He wants to print cookbooks, that give so many, Malecha and Yavana, tasty meals, and wants everybody to be able to indulge in all this rather than be confined to simply, what we have to offer in the temples or within our, Vedic culture or within a, vegetarian or vegan diet. He wants people to be able to enjoy to the fullest extent. And, he wants us to be able to enjoy like every Kshatriya can enjoy gambling. We know it has happened to so many Kshatriyas from the effects of gambling. But still that's a part of their life. So he wants everybody to be able to enjoy these things, even on a commercial level. So he's trying to bring about the corruption of humanity, because after all, it's however these cosmic arrangements go, there's this time when souls who have all these sinful desires get to take their birth. And so that's the age of Kali, and Kali is there to fulfill all of their desires. But it can't come to be when you have a leader like Parikshit, because you have the most powerful human being, the leader of all human beings, that everyone looks up to and knows he's the best. He's the best of the lot. And if we don't follow him, it won't be very good for us. That, to be a good citizen or to be a surrendered citizen. And the kingdom of Parikshit was a glorious thing. And to oppose him was certainly wouldn't bring any sort of victory. So it was very difficult for Kali, because all the citizens so much admired a person like Parikshit. We can understand why, because he was hidden a shoulder above everyone else. As Krishna says in the Gita, what a great person does, common people simply emulate or they follow it. So because he was there, it wasn't possible for Kali to sway the citizens. He would, maybe he would make his advertisement, but the citizens would just ignore it. They would push it away. They didn't want any part of it, because this was not supported by Parikshit. Look at Parikshit. If by following the instructions of the head of state, we can become like that person, then, everyone wants to follow what he has to say. On the other hand, if we have leaders of state who, indulge and enjoy all these things, then, it's certainly all right for the common people to do the same thing. And so, after great leaders like Parikshit Maharaj, eventually these Kshatriyas faded out. Just like powerful Brahmins who could light sacrificial fires by mantra, they all faded out as the ages change. Everybody loses their potency. Even their health, their length of life, it all becomes completely diminished. Until, we have what we have today, So, we would be simply stuck in this this cesspool of illness, of bad qualities ruling the world. But Lord Chaitanya, of course, he gives us this Sankirtan movement, he gives us the Srimad Bhagavatam, he gives us Krishna consciousness, and all we have to do is take advantage of it and absorb our mind in it, rather than absorbing our mind in all the Cinerama movies that, is competing for our dollars, competing for us to go there. We just have to absorb our tongue in Krishna's prasadam rather than the multitude of food that you can buy in the marketplace. If we take advantage of Krishna consciousness like that, then we can actually not only escape the Kali Yuga, but we can get things beyond our dreams, Yeah, people, those of us who remain attached and, desire some type of material enjoyment will get the best of that. And these celestial planets, or be born in a nether yuga where things are much better for human life and for self-realization, we'll get more than what we deserve. Much more than what we deserve. We don't deserve even a small fraction of what Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement has to offer every individual in the world. And all Srila Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya's representative, ask of us is to help him to distribute this treasure of Krishna consciousness to everyone, so everyone can take advantage of it. Everyone can hear Krishna's name, and once the name has been heard, then we never know how it will sprout up in the heart of a person. There's just miraculous things that can happen that are beyond our ability to understand. And it's all by Lord Chaitanya's mercy that there's this window of opportunity in the Kali Yuga. Otherwise, when that window shuts after so many thousands of years, and Kali Yuga is such a nasty age, you just can't imagine when these Kshatriyas become just like barbarians, and they all fight with one another. I mean, we have a glimpse of it. I mean, if you just look at the whole Muslim conquest of Bharatavarsha, I mean, it was just just a horrific world of fighting for power and wealth. And, it was, Vedic culture was completely decimated. If it wasn't for Lord Chaitanya's movement, the Kali Yuga would have continued. And if it wouldn't have been ultimately by the Muslim forces, then it would have been by the Christian forces in the form of the British Raj taking complete control of the continent and never letting it go, and then all of them fighting over the wealth of the world. So we have a little glimpse of what will happen in the future is when Lord Chaitanya's movement leaves the world. And they all fight amongst one another. And they continue to fight amongst one another. And they never stop fighting amongst one another for control of the resources of earth. Until the end of Kali Yuga. That's what will go on. You can just read about it in recorded history. You can read about the Mughal Empire that decimated China, decimated actually the Muslim Empire before they converted to Islam. It decimated it. People in Mecca were afraid of them. They entered into southern Europe. The Crusades fought with the Muslims to try to take back the Near East. That's all they do is fight with one another and cause so many problems amongst the women, the children, the educated people, even the economics of the world, gets taken over simply by the production of war equipment. And that's Kali Yuga. So nobody can even imagine how peace will be brought to the world. I mean, they've been trying and trying and trying And there is no peace. It gets worse and worse and worse. So Lord Chaitanya, he'll bring about some peace. It's only by the potency of this Sankirtan Yoga. Like constant, chanting of Krishna's names, eventually we'll find some peace in our own heart. And then, it will spread from heart to heart. And, we may not notice it happening in our little lifetime, but so many, it continues to grow like a snowball and get bigger and bigger and bigger. That's the prophecy, and, we see it even in our lifetime, how much it grows and how many people become affected and how this Sankirtan movement can actually relieve the world, just like the Samsara Dava Nadalita Loka Guruvastika first stanza. That the world is burning, that the spiritual masters, he's like a rain cloud, just like in California. They're so happy that the rain clouds are coming. And the devotees were saying, why don't the devotees go out and chant in Mass to bring some rain, to stop this? I mean, just the devotees chanting can, bring about better weather. But we have to have faith when we chant. And it has to be done as a big sacrifice, where all the devotees assemble and congregationally chant. There's a purpose to the chanting. And one of the initial purposes is to just stop the devastation that's going on from all the sinful reaction happening on earth. It can stop drought. It can stop fire. It can stop everything right in its tracks. By the power of the chanting, things will get better. I guess we can even say maybe even climate control, huh? Or not climate control, what do they call it? Climate change. The climate change. Lord Chaitanya's movement can make it all better, So 8:30 now, we'll need to stop. Take the song. Hare Krishna.